I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, could you please conduct the roll call?
President Kushmarek.
Present.
Councilor Bean.
Present.
Councilor Boschman.
Here.
Councilor Beazall. Councilor Clark.
Here.
Councilor Di Natale.
Here.
Councilor Donnelly. Here. Councilor Green.
Here.
Councilor Joseph.
Here.
Councilor Caddy. Councilor Tran.
Here.
Public forum. Anyone wishing to speak on any matter on the agenda may do so for not more than 2 minutes. If you are addressing a public hearing petition, you will have an opportunity to speak at that time. Please approach the center table and identify yourself by name and address for the record and the item number on the agenda to which you are speaking. Does anyone wish to speak at this time? Mr. Squalia, good evening.
Good evening. Nicholas Squalia, 225 Scott Road. Roughly 6 weeks ago, I sat before this council and I spoke in opposition to 206-16. Not once in that meeting did I hear the word clarification. After that meeting, I did not hear the word clarification again. It clearly says to restore the option of health benefits. Only after the public outrage started, which maybe I'm using that term a little too loosely, but people were angry, did I hear that it was for clarification. 2 council members spoke in the newspaper in favor of the petition, but now it's just for clarification. I, for one, feel that some of the citizens in this city were lied to, or at least deceived in people's positions as to what they were once for to restore. Now they were just looking for clarification. And that is all I have to say. God bless Fitchburg, Massachusetts.
Does anyone else wish to speak at this time? Mr. Laxo? Commissioner, good evening.
Good evening. I'm Lenny Laxo, Public Works Commissioner, speaking about petition number 217-16. You might remember that the city received a grant from MEMA and FEMA several years ago to mitigate the flooding problem that's occurred in the Shea Street neighborhood ever since the neighborhood was built back in the 1960s. A couple years ago, we completed phase 1, which involved constructing some larger culverts connecting the neighborhood drainage system to Shea Brook. And phase 2 will involve detaining stormwater on the west side of Shea Street, which is the Oak Hill Country Club side of Shea Street, through the construction of a long grass-lined swale on Oak Hill property along Shea Street. So Oak Hill has generously offered to grant us the easement at no cost. So I'd like to thank them for their cooperation for donating the easement to the city. They didn't really have to do that, but they're being good neighbors. MEMA has a deadline for completing the project of April 1st of 2017. So for all practical purposes, we really need to get the project done by December 1st. We thought we were all ready to go with permits last February, but one of the state agencies unexpectedly intervened and required all kinds of information and studies over the past 6 months, but we have that behind us now, and all we need besides the easement is final approval from MEMA and FEMA, and we're hoping to get that this week. While all this was going on, we did get construction bids, and we're able to award the construction contract last week, so that we could get moving as soon as we can. So with all the delays that we've had, the schedule is now critical, so I'm requesting suspension of the rules so that petition 217-16 can be considered tonight.
Motion to suspend rules on 217-16.
Second.
I have a motion and second for suspension of the rules on 217-16. Speaking to the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The rules are suspended.
Motion to approve 217-16.
Second.
I have a motion and second to adopt 217-16. Speaking to the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Laxo. Is there anyone else wishing to speak at the public forum during this time? Seeing none? Oh. Ms. Johnson, good evening.
May I pass something out?
You may.
Kelly Johnson, 168 Charles Street, speaking on behalf of the stretch code to 19-16. I am a current member of the Energy Commission, and this stretch code adoption is a large part of Fitchburg becoming a green community. We have some public presentation today by the state, which will be very informative and really will help Fitchburg become no longer a gap in this map. You know, here we are surrounded by these communities who developers are working in consistently, and when they go ahead and come to Fitchburg for new construction and renovations, where the base code in the state is closely reflective of the stretch code, it's just very easy to be able to move forward with this stretch code, seeing as though many of these construction companies are working in the towns and cities around us. They're already taking these action steps to go ahead and adopt this green community, the stretch code, and allow us to become a green community would provide abundance of opportunities for grants. One of the biggest grants that we missed out on was the retrofit of the LED lights for our street lights. That could have been a grant program. So I just have a couple highlights of things that while you all are doing your homework, you will find. Here in Fitchburg, most of the commercial industries that are coming in are renovating buildings. Those renovations, for the most part, will be exempt. So it's new construction mostly that have to come up to these stretch codes. And again, that base code is very close, but renovations can be exempt. Buildings with unusual energy usage can apply for a waiver as well. Grocery stores, warehouse, things like that. Historically designated property at the local and state levels are exempt as well. Fitchburg has many of those. So if someone wants to come in and take a historic home and renovate it, so long as the city designates it as a historic, it is exempt as well. What goes along with the stretch code, the documentation, is the developer would submit the documents of compliance to the building inspector, which wouldn't put a large significant additional burden on the building inspector. He still must go in and go ahead and review everything that's going on. So therefore, compliance is already taken care of for him. There are grants and subsidies promoting themselves as developers can be considered green growing within the marketplace. Commercial paybacks. I mean, we're looking at industry that are going to be here for a long time, and the paybacks, especially when we're seeking the thought of Unitil, guys. Unitil, if we can keep that money out of Unitil's pockets and back into the industry and the residents, I think that's a huge part of this that we need to pay attention to. We're looking at, yes, thousands of dollars to have these upgrades, but in the end, they'll come back to the owners, which is a big incentive. Lots of subsidies, again, tax credits for residents. What's going to be a part of this? Insulation, air sealing, windows, doors, skylights, duct sealing for heating and cooling. But just because you're doing your boiler doesn't mean you need to replace your windows. Just because you're putting in insulation doesn't mean you need to replace your boiler. It's they're not put onto each other. And I just want to hope and say that all of you will see the significance of what a green community would be, being, again, no longer a gap on that map. So I hope you will support the petition in front of you today.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Good evening.
I'm Chelsea here. I'm 200 Central Ave Extension, and again, got my petition for the soccer field. I know it's already gone.
Could you
through
please
guys.
just restate your name for the record?
Michelle Saint Cyr.
Okay, Michelle.
I have a letter from one of the owners of the industrial park who was not aware of the proposed soccer field going through. And he asked me if I could just read this just so you guys have it. Like I said, I know you've already voted, but we're still 100% against it. So this is from Alfaro. He says, ladies and gentlemen of the Fitchburg City Council, I am unable to attend tonight's meeting, but have asked Mr. St. Cyr to read into the record that as the owner of Alfaro, located at 99 Stevens Road, I am opposed to the soccer complex located in close proximity of our business. As the owner of a business in Fitchburg for the past 50 years, I feel conflicted to limit the potential growth of the city of Fitchburg. However, a recreational facility of this scope does not belong in an industrial park. There is a large volume of light to heavy traffic throughout the day and usually into the early evening during the week. Less on Saturdays, but there is traffic. Sunday, there is almost none. I have witnessed on many occasions inappropriate and possible criminal activities on and around our building grounds. On a regular basis, we have found trash and other items left on our property. I am concerned with the added increase in pedestrians and vehicular traffic that will only become worse. I urge the developers of the project to reconsider the appropriateness of locating the facility within the confines of the industrial park. I do want to say also that I never had the opportunity to talk to you guys, but we went out and got over 100 signatures on only 4 roads in that area, and 95% of these people were not aware of the soccer complex or the proposed soccer complex going there, and every one of them was absolutely opposed to it. I will tell you, Mr. Marsden, you do have tenters up on that property, because as I went to look while the wetlands were being flagged out and whatnot, nice big tent, campfire, campground. I'm home most of the time by myself. It's right in my backyard. You know, if nothing else, can you remove them out of there? I don't feel safe anymore. And I don't think I'll feel safe when that happens. So once again, I'm talking on, I know this, it's mute. You guys have already passed it, but I'm asking and urging once again to take the residents into consideration when you forward this progress in this project, and I hope you don't do it. But talk to the people around you, because like I said, the industrial park, nobody had an idea of it. Nobody on Westminster Hill Road knew. Nobody on Cascade Street, Overland Street, Wachusett Street, nobody knew. I wasn't able to get my petition in enough time. As a direct abutter, I wasn't informed in enough time to fight this, and I just would like you to take that all into consideration. And there's a lot more people that are against it besides me. And I do apologize for the last time. We did get heated. Hopefully you guys understand why. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Good evening.
My name's Jonathan Handler. I live at 1296 Westminster Hill Road. And I know that most of you are not paying attention at this point. I'm going to say what I have to say anyway. Back in the 90s, the city tried to take over that piece of property that Mr. Marsden now owns by eminent domain to expand the industrial park. And overwhelmingly, the neighborhood and anybody in the city who had interest in the project voted against it, and it was shot down. The neighbors, the people in West Fitchburg in general, not just those that abut the property, but the people that live on that side of town, did not want to see the industrial park expanded. What you have effectively done is taken that land, which the city was going to take by eminent domain for its own use and its own profit, and done exactly what the neighbors did not want you to do, now for the profit of one person. This is not for the city of Fitchburg. The city of Fitchburg will not benefit in any way, shape, or manner from this project. The numbers that you have been supplied with are inflated, false, and not accurate. And if you had done your homework, you would know that. And as far as you being insulted, Mr. Caddy, you lied to us. You told us that you would vote the way the abutters wanted you to vote, and you lied to us. You have 3 times failed to live up to your promise, and nobody used any F-bombs or C words in your direction the other night. That's another one of your
Sir, your comment
lies.
should be directed to the chair.
Yeah, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
time. Pay attention to what people are saying. Stop reading your crap. Don't threaten Mr. Tran again.
Mr. President,
We've got his back, not you.
Mr. President,
Sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we deny 213-16, please.
Suspension of the rules.
Under suspension of the rules.
Second.
A motion and a second to suspend the rules on 213-16. Speaking to the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Move we deny 213-16. Second.
I have a motion and second to deny 213-16. Speaking to the motion, Councilor Tran.
What's the reason behind denying it and not sending it to legislative affairs?
Councilor, I can't speak on behalf of the councilors, but
Okay. through you to Council Deantown.
Counselor?
There was a preliminary site plan review by the planning board that gave us 16 conditions that they will be imposing on the developer. That was a public hearing. We had another public hearing in city council on this topic. We had a second public hearing that no one attended. And then we had a third hearing that the public was not allowed to speak at. And this is number 4. 5, actually. So this is the 5th public hearing we've had on this topic. But besides that fact, we've already acted on this. To send it back to legislative affairs and then back to the council, that's about a month to 2 month process. We've already acted on this. It's done. And there was 5 public hearings on this topic. Thank you.
Liar.
There wasn't 5.
Liar.
But there wasn't 5.
Please.
The matter is before the
There was
council.
there was a planning site review. There were 3 city council meetings. 2 allowed public comment. This is the 4th one that allowed public comment, 5 meetings total. People want to call me a liar, fine. Go on the city website, look at the agendas. They're all posted. I'm not lying. This is just a matter of people not liking my position on it, and they're going to call me a liar, fine. Then I'm a liar. But you know what? Except for 5 or 6 people who've called me a liar, the great majority who've contacted me said thank you. I don't know why people think that I'm in this business to try to make people's lives worse. Obviously, they think I did. So be it. Then you'll have to make your voice known at the ballot box. But 5 meetings, 4 public hearings. We've already acted on it, so why are we going to go through 2 or 3 more public meetings on it? Thank you.
I have a motion and second to deny 213-16. Speaking to the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 1 in opposition? Motion carries. Resume to the public hearing, public forum. Is there anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on. If there are no objections, we'll now hear an oral report from the Appointments Committee. Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Appointments Committee met earlier this evening, and on the agenda there were 2 items. This was for student police officers. And those people that are before us tonight are Mr. Demetrius D. Phillips and Mr. Nathan D. Lampkin. The vote was granted. Both items were granted.
Will the committee's report be accepted?
Second.
I have a motion and second to accept the Appointments Committee reports. Speaking to the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Councilor Donnelly?
Board on records?
We'll move to that after we conduct the swearing in. At this point, Chief?
Can I just make a quick comment?
Absolutely,
about
please do.
This latest appointment, this is just another example of where our reserve program's headed. Both these officers, student officers, have already been vetted through the entire system. They've been trained by our training division. We're expediting our hiring process by almost 4 months at this point. And these are 2 fine candidates to show where we're heading in the Fitchburg Police Department with our reserve program, and we're excited to where we've come tonight. They have 24 weeks ahead of them at the full-time academy. We wish them the best of luck, and when they get out in 24 weeks, we should see them in the field actively working as police officers much faster than we had in the past 5 to 6 years. So we're excited about this program, and this is 2 fine examples of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Madam Clerk, would you please conduct the swearing in?
The stars on the lapel mean for the chief.
Please raise your right hand. Repeat after me to take an oath. I do solemnly promise and swear
I do solemnly promise and swear
that I will faithfully and impartially,
that I will faithfully and impartially,
and to the best of my knowledge and ability,
and to the best of my knowledge and abilities,
perform and discharge all the duties
perform and discharge all the duties
incumbent upon me
incumbent upon me
as student police officer,
as student police officer,
effective September 12th,
effective September 12th,
for the city of Fitchburg,
for the city of
so
Pittsburgh.
help me God.
So help me God. Congratulations. Lucky. Congratulations. Chief.
Demetrius, well deserved.
I know, but I say it's expensive. Good luck. Did I say
Thank God you're back, man. Come on, don't go away again. I'm glad you're back.
Councilors, before we resume the agenda, I would just ask a reminder with so many people in the audience. Some have asked for you to speak as loudly as you comfortably can, just to accommodate folks in this room. Unfortunately, particularly for those who are watching on FATV, I'm sure you know at times this room is meant to dampen sound, not to amplify it. So we certainly struggle to make sure that it's loud enough for both the people at home as well as those in attendance. So councilors, just please keep that in mind. That said, I'd now ask for a report from the Committee on Records. Councilor Donnelly.
Reviewed the records report, and it seems to be in order.
Make a motion we accept.
I have a motion and second to accept the report from the Committee on Records. Speaking to the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. The motion carries. Communications and reports from department heads. We have two communications, which are both in your packets, councilors. We have communication one from Calvin D. Brooks, City Treasurer, regarding 12 Foster Street, and a second communication from Mary A. Delaney, Chief Procurement Officer, regarding a parcel of land on Main Street identified in city's assessor records. Will be placed on file in the city clerk's office. Other communications, we have three this evening. One from Andrew Cordio, Chair, Fitchburg Commission on Energy and Environment regarding green communities. Second from Mulaney and Lund regarding notice of intent to sell and convert use of classified forest land. And third, Pension Reserves Investment Management Board. Councils will have those placed on file with the city clerk's office. We'll next move to a special presentation regarding Green Communities Program. Michael Berry and Kelly Brown, Massachusetts Department of Energy and Resources. The center table is now yours. And good evening.
For having us.
Thanks for being here. And once you have the presentation up, if you wouldn't mind each introducing yourself.
Can't get any closer.
Is this the same presentation?
So I just want to say good evening. My name's Callie Brown. I work for the Mass Department of Energy Resources, specifically under the Green Communities Division. And I just want to start off by saying thank you tonight for the council giving us the opportunity to speak. I'll turn it over just to introduce the other two people sitting here with me that will also be speaking throughout the presentation.
Good evening. I'm Michael Berry. I'm a technical consultant for the state of Massachusetts on the Stretch Energy Code.
Excellent.
And my name is John Hume, Planning and Development Director for the Montechusett Regional Planning Commission.
Excellent. Thank you. And I just want to confirm the slideshow you're about to present to us was also the same packet that was sent to the city clerk's office. Is that correct? Wonderful.
So the slides that I'll be going over today were provided to you in advance.
Thank you.
So just starting off, the reason I'm here tonight is to talk specifically about the Green Communities Designation and Grant Program. It's the Green Communities flagship program. It started back in 2010, and the grants are available specifically to qualifying communities. And I'll go over the 5 specific criteria the community needs to meet in order to qualify for the up to $10 million in grants. The grants can be used for energy efficiency projects, renewable projects, and innovative projects. And the funds are out of the state budget. They come from RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, and ACP, Alternative Compliance Payments. So once again, they're not in the general funds. They come from separate sources. Now, speaking about the qualifying communities, how a community gets qualified to become a green community is meeting 5 specific criteria. And the first criteria is to adopt as-of-right siting, which means no special permit, but does allow site plan review. And a community can do this in 3 different ways. They can do this through renewable generation, they can do it through research and development, or they can do it through manufacturing. Only one of the ways need to be met. And John will be speaking a little bit more about how the city looks to meet that criteria. Criteria 2 is to adopt expedited permitting. What this means is an applicant, if they submitted an application for a project related to criteria 1, that they would need to be able to get through the permitting process within a year, and that's the local process. Criteria 3 has 2 parts. The first part is to put together a baseline. The baseline goes over all municipal energy use, including street traffic lights, building use, and all vehicles. Then they take that baseline, and the community is going to show, through energy audits that are in the works, how the city can reduce their baseline by 20% over a 5-year period by identifying boilers that need to be replaced, weatherization, putting weatherization in buildings, upgrading mechanical equipment. Criteria 4 is to purchase only fuel-efficient vehicles. Sometimes I think this is a little misleading. What it means is putting forth a fuel-efficient vehicle policy that really pertains more to administrative-type vehicles. Heavy-duty DPW trucks over 8,500 pounds, F-250s are all exempt. Police cruisers are exempt. It's more towards administrative-type vehicles, inspectional services, those type of vehicles. And what the policy has is a mile per gallon rating, depending on if you're buying a sport utility vehicle or a compact car. And the last criteria is what Mike's going to be addressing later in the presentation. And that criteria is to minimize life cycle costs in new construction. And the recommended way to do that is by adopting the Stretch Energy Code. Now, to date, since 2010, when we started and launched the Green Communities Designation Grant Program, 176 communities have adopted the Stretch Energy Code. And as you can see from the map, you're surrounded by them. And out of that 176, 155 are designated green communities. And I usually always get the question, why is there a difference between the 176 and the 155? Well, we have designation grant applications accepted once a year, so that delta of about 21 are communities, like Fitchburg, that are working towards potentially becoming a green community. So those are communities that we're expecting to see this year submitting designation applications. A designation application has actually been extended this year and pushed out from October 31st, which is usually when we would have designated applications, to November 21st. Now, moving on to what most people want to hear more about is the grant funding that the city would receive if they were a designated green community. The way that it works, as we said from the very beginning, that all municipalities will receive some grant funding once they've been designated and meet those 5 specific criteria. And the designation grant amount is based on a formula. There's a base amount of $125,000 that all communities receive, and then additional grant funding is given out based on the per capita and population of the city. So Fitchburg would be looking at an estimated designation grant of about $300,000. Since 2010, those communities that have been in the program for a while have said, what opportunities would we have for future grant funding? So in 2012, when we had about roughly 70 plus existing green communities, we rolled out our competitive grant round. And that's where once the city, if they were designated, spent that initial $300,000, they'd be able to come in on a yearly basis for competitive grants of up to $250,000 more. And that's available to all existing green communities once they've spent that initial designation grant. To date, between the designation and competitive grant, we've given out $60 million to those 155 green communities. This past year, our competitive round, we gave out just under $10 million to 47 communities throughout the state. And then I always just like to put up some of your neighbors and what they've received since they've been a green community and how long they've been a green community. And just speaking a little bit about the previous comment from the Energy Commission, Leominster just actually asked for $250,000 to go to convert their streetlights to LED. So it definitely is an eligible funding source under the Green Communities Program to switch out LED streetlights, whether it's interior in the buildings or exterior streetlights. Oh, actually, before I go on and introduce Mike, I just wanted to give a few minutes to have John Hume talk from the Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission. John's been a great partner in working with me on the green community side and the city at helping them achieve and meet some of these criteria. And he just wanted to give a quick update.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just going to take up about 1 minute of your time or so, then turn it back over to Kelly. But the MRPC has been providing assistance to the city of Fitchburg, putting together your Green Communities application due on November 21st. And we've been providing staff assistance at no cost to the city of Fitchburg through a program that MRPC has called District Local Technical Assistance, which is DLTA. And it's funded through the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. One form of assistance that I was just going to bring up tonight, because it's actually on your agenda a little bit later, is assistance to the City of Fitchburg Planning Board to meet criterion number 1, which is provide as-of-right siting in designated locations for renewable alternative energy research and development or manufacturing. Fitchburg already has as-of-right zoning for manufacturing in designated areas. But just for extra clarification, there's a proposed zoning amendment to amend the ordinance's definition of manufacturing to include alternative energy manufacturing, which is actually on your agenda for tonight under item 220-16. So that's part of the Green Communities application process. Thank you.
All right, and now I will turn it over to Mike Berry to go into specific details of what adopting the optional stretch energy code means and what the other 176 communities to date have chosen to do.
Thanks. I always feel like I'm the one who draws the short straw here. Kelly gets to talk about money, and you get to talk about fun things. I get to talk about energy code. So I apologize in advance. I'm a licensed builder. I have my construction supervisor's license, and I know we have our building code official in the room, I believe, tonight. And anyone that knows building code knows it's state law. It's pretty dry. I'll try to make this as interesting as possible. I would ask if you would hold questions to the end, only because some of my slides may answer some of your questions. And again, I'm going to keep it very high level and not kind of get in the weeds of the technical aspects of the code. I'm going to talk tonight about what the stretch code is, how it affects residential new construction and commercial construction. Your Energy Committee person that presented earlier brought up and talked about the stretch code. What I'm going to get into is the details of what the stretch code is that you would be adopting. There's a current stretch code that right now is in the state of Massachusetts that your neighbors have, but the stretch code's changing, and so is the base energy code, which your town currently has. So I'm going to, what's that? City. I'm going to talk about the new energy codes, and I'm going to also go over cost analysis. The person from the Energy Committee spoke about some of the costs associated to meeting the stretch code. What you're going to see is the cost. There is a huge payback there, and it is very beneficial to homeowners. Kelly talked a little bit about this, but Criteria 5, the Stretch Energy Code, looks at minimizing life cycle costs for residential new construction and commercial construction. This looks at the cost to operate a building, the energy cost, looking at ways to conserve water, and looking at ways to also incorporate renewable energy and energy-efficient technologies, some of the new technologies that are out there. The state of Massachusetts adopted the Stretch Energy Code as an appendix to the base energy code here in Massachusetts, the building code. And the reason why they did that back in 2010 was because other communities were actually asking for a more energy efficient building code, an energy code. And what the state decided to do is instead of having towns adopt one that they wrote themselves, they would come up with an alternative appendix to the code, which they call Appendix 115AA, which is the stretch energy code. Criteria 5 requires buildings to become more energy efficient. And how do they do this? What it does is it looks at the current code you have in your town today, which is what we call a base energy code. Currently in your town, a builder can build a new building essentially two ways. One, using what they call the prescriptive path, which is following the code as it's written. You put in this type of insulation, this type of window, this type of equipment. You follow the code prescriptively. The other way that they can do it is what they call the performance path. Performance path is exactly what it sounds like. It tests for performance. It allows for trade-offs. Currently, right now, the state requires a certain amount of insulation. Through the prescriptive path, you have to add in that insulation to exactly what the code says. The performance path allows you to do trade-offs. So if there are things that are more important to you, better windows, renewable energy, better heating equipment, cooling equipment, you can add those in, and that factors into the overall performance of your home. So currently in your city, your builders are currently building to the base energy code. And as your energy committee person spoke about earlier, builders are nomadic. They don't tend to build in just one town. I've been doing these since 2010. I've done over 140 presentations. I did all the presentations to all your surrounding communities that currently have the stretch code. I've heard every reason to adopt it. I've heard every reason not to adopt it. I can tell you the stretch code that came out in 2010 was truly a stretch. It was a reach for people because it was essentially a code that was 2 code cycles before it was being adopted. What you're going to see tonight is the stretch code that's coming, the stretch code that your city would adopt, is essentially the base code. On January 2nd of 2017, the state of Massachusetts will enact 2 new energy codes. The base energy code, IECC 2015, and the stretch code, Appendix 115AA. What the state decided to do was the current stretch code requires builders to not only address new construction, but renovations and additions. This was for builders, and I can say this because I am a builder and I have friends still in the trade who do this all the time. It was very difficult for them to understand. You had the base energy code, and then you had the stretch code, and the stretch code affected residential new construction one way, additions and renovations another way. What the state decided to do with the new stretch code, because they knew this new base energy code was coming out, was to align the two of them. So essentially now, when a town adopts the stretch code, the new stretch code that's coming out on January 2nd, it's adopting the code you guys are going to get on January 2nd regardless. It just removes that prescriptive path for new construction. So basically, in your town, whether you adopt the stretch code or not, January 2nd, your energy code's changing. And part of that energy code is a prescriptive and a performance path. Towns that adopt the stretch code or have the stretch code will just remove the prescriptive path. It has no effect on, the stretch code has no effect on additions and renovations for both residential and commercial anymore. You defer to the base energy code. What they really want to do is look at life cycle costs, and where you affect the biggest amount of change for life cycle costs is in new construction. That first cost to do something right is more effective than going back and fixing something, because you're typically not going to be able to renovate or get a home to higher energy performance for the dollar amount that's going to be beneficial. It was also spoken about historical exemptions. The new base energy code here in Massachusetts clarifies what a historical exemption is, and it aligns with the stretch code. So again, what used to be a big stretch is not as much of a stretch. And again, because builders are nomadic and work in other towns, builders are building to the stretch code, and they're already doing performance path construction. What does the stretch code affect? What is applied to? Applies to everything that the base energy code does. So currently, everything in your town today, that if you were to build a new home, the stretch code also follows suit. Earlier when the energy committee person spoke, they mentioned how with renovations and additions, if you did some work, you wouldn't have to. If you put a new boiler in, you wouldn't have to put new windows. You don't have to do that, because that's not what the base code says. So again, this is aligning the stretch code to the base code, with the exception of that removal of the prescriptive path. So why do we test for performance? It's not that our prescriptive codes are bad. Our prescriptive codes are good. The problem is we don't know if things are installed properly. Wouldn't you like to know that when someone puts insulation in your home, it was installed properly? It's making contact on all sides. Wouldn't you like to know that when your heating equipment went in, that it was actually calibrated for performance? Wouldn't you actually also like to know that what you're paying for was what was truly installed and installed properly? That's what performance testing is. Prescriptive codes are good. They're very solid, and they do what needs to be done, but they don't ultimately give you what performance testing gives you. Slight gaps in insulation and air sealing, like missing some of those key areas. This picture here, we don't live in our attics and our basements. We may store some suitcases in our attics, and we may have a couple things down in our basement, but primarily we live in that shell. We don't want to be heating and cooling those spaces. And of course, anyone who's ever had ice damming occur, one of the reasons you have ice damming is because you're losing heat into unconditioned space. It's melting the snow and then eventually refreezing and turning into ice and going into your soffits. A home that's high performance, a home that's been tested for performance, tends not to have ice damming because you're looking for all those gaps. Performance testing is done through what they call a HERS rater. A HERS rater is hired by a builder. So again, in all the surrounding communities near you that have the stretch code, builders are working with HERS raters. HERS raters are third-party verifiers that are subcontracted to the builder. So again, we heard about the role of the kind of the HERS rater with your building code official. Your building code official still retains all the same inspections that they'll do. The HERS rater is just there to make sure the home passes the energy code and it performs as it's supposed to. The HERS rater performs what they call a HERS rating. The HERS rating is this index here you see on the right. This was actually started by the energy efficiency mortgage industry to see how effective adding money into a home to do a home performance upgrades for energy efficiency would pay back in energy savings. Unfortunately, many people know that the energy efficiency mortgage industry was run by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and when they did come out, oil prices were at an all-time low. I think it was 89 cents a gallon we were paying for heating oil. Electric costs were in the low teens, and also gas costs were pretty low as well. So the HERS rating actually then got adopted by the building industry. So we've actually had reference to the HERS index, this HERS rating, in the energy code since as far back as the 6th edition. So again, we used to hear from builders, well, this is totally new. I've never heard of this. It's in the code. It's been in the code. What's different is it's an option right now. So in your city, it's an option for a builder to work with a HERS rater or not work with a HERS rater. In stretch code communities, you will work with a HERS rater. But again, you're testing for performance, and you're going to see how homes perform. The base energy code that we're adopting on January 2nd of 2017 is going to require builders who build to the performance path to do a HERS 55. So again, in your city, if you decide not to adopt the stretch code and a builder wants to build to the performance path, they'll build to a HERS 55. If your city adopts the stretch code and that same builder builds to the performance path, they hit a HERS 55 as well. So again, they've aligned the two codes to make it really easy for builders to understand the codes and not have to carry around a lot of extra paperwork. What does a HERS 55 roughly mean? It means your home is 45%, probably more energy efficient. The reason why I say probably is because it depends on size and on heating fuel types, and you'll see when I go into the cost analysis what that means. There's programs out there to offset the cost to doing HERS ratings. I always joke this is my night job. My day job is I run the residential new construction program here in Massachusetts. I've been doing so for 10 years. This is a voluntary program. All of us as ratepayers, you folks as Unitil ratepayers, pay into a fund for energy conservation, and that pays into the Mass Save brand. I'm sure some of you, or hopefully a lot of you, recognize the Mass Save logo. We all pay into this. Builders right now in your town and surrounding towns, builders, homeowners, architects, designers, tradespeople can apply for these funds to offset the incremental cost of meeting the stretch code or the base code. So this money is currently available today. So hopefully, if for nothing else, people who are watching this or people in the room know that these funds are available to offset some of the cost to meeting the energy code. This program provides incentives to builders to meet higher energy efficiency standards up to $4,500 per home. It provides funding to work with a HERS rater of up to $1,200 per home. And then the HERS rater actually applies for these funds on behalf of the builder. And the way the program works is it's a one-stop shop. So basically, the HERS rater submits all the paperwork for both code compliance and for this program, and then also bundles all the incentives together as well. So if you have high-efficiency heating equipment, cooling equipment, lighting, all those incentives come to you, and it comes in one check. Real quick, just to get one quick thing about lighting. We heard about, Kelly mentioned LEDs in commercial buildings and exterior use. Currently, the code you have in town today, your energy code, requires 75% of all your lighting that's installed in residential new construction has to be high efficacy, meaning that a screw-in base bulb, Edison type bulb fixture has to have 75% of them have to have these LEDs or CFLs in them. This program actually gives out free LEDs, as many as a builder needs. So even if you're just looking to meet the base code, this program can help offset those costs. These are the cost analysis, and it's tough to see. And again, we provided them in the packets as well. I would ask folks to look them over because I'm going to go through them. And what we did is we looked at a bunch of different types of homes here in Massachusetts. And what we're going to show you tonight is two 2,200 square feet homes that were built in Worcester, both 3-bedroom, one electrically heated and one gas heated. Believe it or not, we're seeing more and more electrically heated homes now being built in the Commonwealth because of new technology. Air source heat pumps, those mini splits you see, the Mitsubishi heating systems you see are very highly efficient. And there's an incredible amount of incentives right now to put those in. And so people are putting those in lieu of oil, gas, or other type of heating fuels because you can actually control your heat better. There's also incredible technology now for hot water. So we're seeing all electric houses now again being built in Massachusetts after for years and years just seeing gas. On the left-hand side of this, and again, I know it's kind of overshooting the screen, you can see where it says HERS index or ERI, and underneath that you see a number of 57. Below that you see a 49. Those are the two scores you would hit if you were building to the stretch code or building to the base code. So a 57 and a 49, we're talking 8 points. When I show you what it takes to get 8 points to build to the stretch code, the home on the top doesn't even meet the base code requirements. So even if the base code's a 55 of a HERS index, so even then that delta becomes smaller. You can see on the other side the cost. The estimated cost adjustments plus working with a HERS rater, there is a cost working with a HERS rater. HERS raters charge a fee. Fees vary by the type of home, and I always have people ask me, well, how much does the HERS rater charge? I can't tell you. It'd be like asking an electrician how much is it going to cost to wire a house. Electrician needs to know a lot of things about that house. Same thing with any trade. So because this is for a 2,200 square foot electrically heated home, we do know the HERS rater cost. You can see this person receive $4,793 in utility rebates, and also rebates through the Mass Clean Energy Center for those air source heat pumps. Basically, the person is already cash positive just right off the bat based on their incremental cost, the $2,066 and the $4,700 or $4,800 in utility rebates. You're already up ahead. You look at the estimated reduced cost of energy, it's $567 per year. The change to your down payment and your annual mortgage, you're rolling $141 onto your mortgage, not a month, annually. And you're saving $567 in your first year. One thing we know is energy costs are not going to go down. They will continue to rise, and these savings become greater. This shows a story that tells a story that this house is cash positive in year one. In year two, you continue to be saving money. What this means is on the left-hand side, you see the baseline features. That means building to a code. So that's what you would have to do to build a code. On the right, you see the adjusted features. That's what you have to build to do the stretch code. You can see something like the insulation, floor insulation, R30 grade 2. What that means is when, again, we talk about the difference between a prescriptive code and a performance code, again, prescriptive codes are good, but they don't test for performance. We grade insulation when we do performance testing. 3 means it passes code, but it's not a great job. And 1 means it not only passes code, but it's a fantastic job. Wouldn't we want as homeowners to have everything that's done in our house to be a grade 1? But what we did is we moved the grade and just even went to a grade 2 and even showed that this house not only performs well, this house would perform even better at a grade 1, but the cost to get an insulator to do a better job should be no cost. You would like to know that you're a builder, or if you are a builder, you're working with subs that are doing grade 1 work. You can see here the incentive breakdown. And again, this home is not only giving the homeowner back those life cycle costs and making sure that they're saving money in the long run. Their incremental costs were actually nothing. They're actually made money on this home and will continue to do so by their savings that they'll have. On the gas heated home, it's a little bit of a different story. It's the same size home, but natural gas, because of the way that the efficiencies are, and also the rebates that you get back from utilities. You can see the cost to build to this home to meet the stretch code was $2,000 roughly. The utility rebates make it almost a wash. But then when you look at the energy savings per year of $165, it basically nets out and there's no change to the mortgage. So through the utility incentives, through the state incentives for any additional equipment, this home has absolutely zero cost to the homeowner to build to a higher efficiency standard than the base code in Massachusetts. And again, if you look at these 2 different features, that shows what makes the house a little bit different. We see better heating equipment. One of the things that a lot of people don't know, that currently in a base code community or city like yours, that you get no trade-offs for mechanical equipment. So the better the mechanical equipment you put in under the prescriptive code makes no difference. So if you go out and spend top dollar on high efficiency heating equipment, cooling equipment, hot water, it makes no difference. Through the performance path, it moves that needle. It makes a home perform better. So again, the trade-off portion of performance path is what makes building to this way, building to the stretch code, more attractive, I think. And I think typically when builders do it, they struggle at first, but like all good builders, they find a way to make it work. And then once they find how to make it work, they typically don't go back to prescriptive path construction. My program that I mentioned I run during the day, we have a 90% builder retention rate, and the reason why we don't have 100% is some builders go out of business, some builders retire, and some builders just aren't building a lot of homes. They may only build 1 home a year or 1 home every 2 years. So we find that this is something that's beneficial to homeowners, to builders, and to the community at large. So I'm not going to get into these maps. You guys have seen them enough. That's our contact information, and I obviously at this point will be happy to take questions.
Questions from councilors? Councilor Boschman.
On this program, I buy one of your homes. How much the cost do I have to pay? Does the cost for the house go up? In other words, they're building a brand new house, and we're going to 100% what you say for help me to save energy. Does the rate for a guy like me, the price of the home go up?
It does go up, but we also notice that the incremental cost to meet this code is offset by utility incentives and state incentives. It's a wash.
The reason why I'm asking
And
this,
also the energy savings. I'm
the
sorry.
reason why I'm asking this question, I renovated a house like a lot of these people here, and I put everything in that house energy efficient that I could have.
Yep.
Everything. Right to the top of the line. And I did it right.
Yep.
But my electric light didn't go down, it went up. Because the utility company says they got to make X amount of profit. So you can give me all this wonderful things you're telling me, go green, but the energy goes up, no matter how you look at it, because if they don't sell, just like the water department in Fitchburg, if they don't sell enough water, we have to go up in the rate. So what are we accomplishing?
So your rates will go up regardless. You did everything right. Can you imagine for the person who didn't, what they're paying in energy bills? I'm in the same boat as you. I have a home. I live on Cape Cod. I have an 1830 farmhouse. When I bought my house, oil prices were 98 cents a gallon. I was going through 3.5 tanks of oil, 275-gallon tanks of oil. I did everything you did. I gutted it to studs, put in insulation. I went down to 2.25 tanks of oil a year. When the oil prices stayed around $1, it wasn't really a big deal, saving a whopping, $275, $300. When oil prices shot to $4 a gallon, that was real energy savings and real cost savings. So I understand where you're coming from, and I understand that there is an upfront cost, but energy costs will continue to rise regardless of whether you do the right thing or not. People building a home just to code, you're building the worst possible home that you can build by law, because that's building to code. So why wouldn't you want to incentivize people to build better than code? And I think your energy committee did a good job where you're starting to see, like in communities and cities like yours, where you're surrounded by green communities, you got to start wondering, if I'm going to build a home, and I'm going to wonder why this town or the city may not want to adopt or become a green community.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but I know a guy that he's a tradesperson, and he's been in the business for over 30 years, if not more than 30 years. And so the guy says, I want that furnace because it's 94% efficient. 94% efficient, and I want it because Mass Save is going to pay me $4,000 on that energy efficient. The guy that installs that furnace says, Wicket, you're not really going to save that much money because this one at 89% efficient, when it breaks down, is cheaper to fix than the 94% efficient boiler. So where is the savings? If you get a trade person that knows, it's good that I sit behind a desk and I come up and I look, but you're not a tradesperson. You're sitting there with, oh, that's a good idea. Let's do. Let's install this. We say the same thing with our roads. Go green. So they cut back on what they're supposed to put in the tar, and all of a sudden, 5 years later, we're fixing the roads that we just fixed $300,000 later.
So one quick thing about the trades is, again, there's a reason why you're seeing high efficiency equipment being put in. And it's also because it's a health and safety issue. Because an 89% efficient boiler is most likely atmospheric, meaning it's drawing its combustion air from your basement, from where you live. You have the chances to have backdrafting. You have chances to have carbon monoxide issues. Direct vented heating equipment, high efficiency heating equipment, is just that. It's direct vented, meaning that it's a sealed combustion system, which is going to cut down on the opportunity for people to have CO issues. So again, I understand where you're coming from. I would also just encourage you to think outside of just the fact that energy costs. We always say that you're going to save energy. You're not going to save money. You're going to be in a more comfortable home, a safer home, a better performing home. And ultimately, at the end of the day, buying a house is the biggest investment anyone's ever going to make. It's an appreciating asset in most markets. So why wouldn't you want the best possible home you can build? So I encourage you, and that's what this looks at, is life cycle.
And my final question to you is this. A few years ago, reading the paper, we were going energy, we were going conservative, we wanted to be perfect. We were making houses so tight that we had to keep the windows open in the wintertime because people were literally getting sick.
So the code that you currently have in your town right now, which is what they call IECC 2012, addresses ventilation. You have to ventilate a home. It's code. It's required. What you don't have to do, and again, it's a prescriptive code, working with a HERS rater, doing the performance testing, you actually go through using a energy modeling software. It actually tells you how much ventilation you need per square foot of the home. So you're ventilating right. You're not over-ventilating, you're under-ventilating, you're ventilating right, because HERS raters follow a standard called ASHRAE 62.2, which actually says how you ventilate. Instead of going back and saying, well, you know what, heat rises, there's a stack effect, we'll put a couple vents in, a couple gable vents, a couple drip, soffit vents, and call it a day. The code actually requires now ventilation standards. Working with a HERS rater is going to get you a home that's ventilated right. And let's face it, do you really want to ventilate your home through the wall cavities and through your basement where you might be storing paints, other volatile organic compounds and have dust and stuff that you're getting, or would you like to control the air flow through mechanical ventilation? And these costs actually, in the cost analysis, actually show meeting the ventilation standard as well. So we're not tightening. Again, trust me, I know the concern because I used to do weatherization for the state of Massachusetts, and back in the 80s, that was a huge issue. We were over tightening homes and causing sick homes. So it is something the code's done a great job, and whether the stretch code or the base code, it is addressing ventilation, which is a good thing.
Councilor Joseph.
So if we adopt this as a stretch city, basically whenever somebody does a new construction, renovates, or anything within their home or manufacturing, they have to meet the stretch code in order for construction?
So only for residential new construction and commercial construction over 100,000 square feet. So renovations and additions, just as you would have to do today in the city, you just have to meet the base code. So there's no additional requirement for the stretch code anymore to meet additions and renovations. Only thing the stretch code affects is residential new construction and commercial new construction in excess of 100,000 square feet.
Okay, so that would be if we adopt this, this will be the new standard for the city of Fitchburg. There will be nothing less than the stretch standard acceptable.
Right. So if you were to build a new home, you would have to build to the performance path. If you were putting in new windows, you'd have to do whatever the base code tells you to do, which you'd have to do anyhow.
Now, does that mean that you would be required to hire a
HERS rater?
HERS rater?
Yeah. So performance path construction, you have to work with a HERS rater. But just so you know, currently the code you have in your city today requires builders to have what they call infiltration testing done, meaning a blower door test done, regardless of whether or not they're building to the prescriptive or performance path. They also have to have their ducts tested, which requires them to work with a HERS rater. So currently, builders are working with a HERS rater in some form or fashion. What you're actually asking the HERS rater to do is to do the full-blown performance test, not just do just the infiltration and duct testing. So again, that cost analysis actually factors in the fact that the builders are currently working with HERS raters at some level.
Now, what is a requirement to become a HERS rater?
So HERS raters, it's a national accreditation. It goes through a national organization called ResNet, the Residential Energy Services Network. ResNet not only oversees HERS raters follow the same suit. If anyone knows like the real estate market, just as a realtor has to work for a broker, a HERS rater has to work for a provider. There's national providers, there's local providers here in Massachusetts. Currently, right now, there's almost 70 companies. There's 60 working in my program that are providing HERS ratings, employing over 300 people. So it used to be back in 2010 when Kelly and I were doing these, people would say, well, is there enough HERS raters? And I'd be like, Now, I can honestly tell you that it's not an issue finding a HERS rater. With that being said, it is a national certification. You have to take a training. You have to be tested. You have to keep up with continuing education credits every year. You have to be in good standing with your provider, and a certain amount of your homes have to be tested by your provider to make sure you're meeting the standard of ResNet.
Is there a regulation on the fees? Is there a regulator on the fees for a HERS rater?
HERS rater charges a fee just like any subcontractor. So there would be no regulation. It would be like saying, why would there be a regulation on having an electrician or a plumber or a drywaller?
Because it's something that we're requiring these people to do. That's why if all of a sudden HERS raters unite and say you had 2,200 on there, it's 4,500, 5,000. What's going to regulate the fact that they don't go crazy, and we've made them the law in the city of Fitchburg that they have to be
Again,
on
I
there?
think you have to remember that they are the law right now. You have to do performance testing. You have to have your infiltration testing done, and ducts, if they're outside a conditioned space, done by a HERS rater. So regardless of whether you adopt the stretch code or not, someone who's building a new home in your city will have to work with a HERS rater at some level to have that performance testing done. So what's going to dictate the pricing is the market. I mean, honestly, that's what dictates the pricing in any trade in the building industry.
That part kind of scares me. It really does. And I know that, that's honest people stay honest and dishonest people don't.
I know. you have some?
Yeah.
He just
So
got kicked.
One thing I'd say is I think more HERS raters is creating more competition,
Yeah.
which is ranging things because there's more people and more HERS raters trying to have their own businesses. And I think another thing, just because I've listened to him give a lot of presentations, one easy way to distinguish between what the base code is now and what the stretch code would be is, like he said, the base code, if you were not going to adopt the stretch code, any new construction, any new residence is going to have to work with the HERS rater for the duct testing and the blower door test and pay a fee to that HERS rater. The biggest difference between the two is the modeling. So what happens is when you work with a HERS rater, they're going to look at your plans and they're going to enter into a modeling system. And then that's when that score comes out at the end of that 55 that you're trying to meet to say that the house was actually built the way the way the plans were done. So you buy a car, you get a mile per gallon rating. You buy an appliance, you know how many kilowatt hours or therms it's going to use. That's what that HERS rater is doing at the end of the day when you get your house. It's showing you how much energy it's supposed to consume versus the base code that incorporates pieces of that performance path but doesn't give you that whole test at the end.
I mean, I own an older home, and as a homeowner, my two goals are to pay the utility companies less and to do the right thing for the planet. So, I mean, hopefully people will have that in mind when they go for whatever they want to build, because you see houses that have been built that are complete energy efficient houses, and that's the standard. That should be the goal. But I just want to make sure that we're not adopting something that's going to be.
One other thing I mentioned that usually comes up is I always like to point out that the control still stays at the local level. The code does change every 3 years, and so as we're moving to a new base code and a new stretch code, one thing I get asked a lot is this is an optional code. So adopting it allows you to come in and be designated green community, get access to grant funding. But if there was a time, it hasn't happened yet, all 176, it never happened to date, but I always do put it out there that a city or a town could unadopt it as well the same way. It would mean you wouldn't be a green community anymore and you wouldn't have access to grant funding, but that still is an option there. And just to clarify again, that has not happened to date, but it just is usually something that I think makes sense at the local level to know.
Thank you.
Councilor Di Natale.
I'd like to focus more on the city side of things with our municipal buildings. We have several municipal buildings in our city, obviously, and we have several school buildings. Does this at all conflict with the Mass School Building Authority when we do renovations through them? Because I recall a few years ago we did mass renovations through that program. We had windows replaced and the whole 9 yards with better energy and heating controls. Is that separate from that? Because the way I'm thinking right now is from the presentation. I like this program in the sense that in the future to get grant access funding for changing all the lights in our schools to LED, cutting down the cost. Can that be obtained through MSBA as well, or is that strictly through this program? Or can you get them from both?
You can get them from both.
Jody.
Okay.
So I think one thing that would be noticed is in a city, you could continually go through the Accelerated Green Repair Program and focus, because we don't generally pay for windows under our program, just with the payback and cost benefit analysis, and roofs and boilers as well. But on the city side, that isn't a program available. So you could use the funding to go to city or leverage the two.
But for like light replacement, this would be something for that use.
Yep.
And I know we have several buildings, both city and school, that it wouldn't hurt to convert to LED. I mean, I've recently converted to LED in my house. Just simple things like lamps, overhead lighting in my rooms. I mean, it's so much brighter and it lasts longer. And I just would like, the city's already moved in that direction with the street lights, which was a very smart move on our part. But I'd like to expand that to all the school buildings and city buildings. So this is why this program catches my eye for that funding, to actually make some headway into that. My only other question would be, you said earlier about $300,000 would be available for Fitchburg if we were being this program. Is that a annual amount, or is that just, if we were to adopt it today, that would be what we may be eligible for in FY17, FY18, or how do you arrive at that $300,000 figure?
Yeah, so what happens is, initially, so the designation amount, we kind of think of it as you've met those 5 criteria. You submit your application. Congratulations, you've been designated, and it's a formula. So it's that $125,000 as a base amount, and then additional grant funds are based on per capita and population. And so when I ran it through, an estimated amount about $300,000 comes out for Fitchburg. If you guys were designated and you applied in November, it would be a call to the mayor and the chair of the city council and say, congratulations, that money's been put aside for the city of Fitchburg to come in January with a grant application of how you're going to spend those funds. And those projects usually come out of the energy reduction plan, which are the buildings you're referring to. It could use some improvements on the equipment and mechanical. Then once you've spent the $300,000, that's when the city would have the eligibility to come in for future competitive rounds of up to $250,000, and that's given out on an annual basis. So that's when I referenced we gave out just about $9.5 million this year for 47 communities, just about $9 million last year for 42 communities. So there would be definitely other opportunities to come in, but it is competitive. That $300,000 is specifically set aside for the city of Fitchburg, though.
So okay, I just wanted, this is more for public clarification too. So $300,000 would be our share in the first year of the program once we are designated.
Yes.
And then after that, we'd be competing with other communities like any other grant we apply for, up to $250,000.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you. Councilors, just want to make you aware, we'll be sending a petition later on this evening to 1916 to Legislative Affairs Committee concerning the same thing. So if there's questions or concerns that you have now, you'll have the opportunity to ask these folks questions between now and the committee meeting, as well as the chair could certainly, if you feel there's more questions than answers, could certainly request them to return to a Legislative Affairs Committee meeting at a future date. Just wanted to make that known. That said, Councilor Green.
Do we currently have any HERS contractor in Fitchburg?
I'd have to look, but I do know that there's HERS raters in this area because, again, I run the residential new construction program, and Unitel pays into that, so I know we've done work here. I know Carter Scott, who's a developer in Townsend, utilizes HERS rater. There's a company called GDS who's right on the border of New Hampshire, so they're pretty local. I do believe there's also someone in Leominster, but there's a list I can make available that actually shows where each one of the HERS rating companies work, so I can provide that.
All right, and then are we going to need a grant writer to apply for these grants every year, or are they automatic?
So right now, so one of the reasons that the city applied to Montchusett Regional Planning Commission is they're helping you put together what you need along with myself for the 5 criteria for designation application this year. And we do have what's called Municipal Energy Technical Assistance. It's another opportunity that's available once a year where the city could come in and ask for funds to have the RPA also help with future grants as well, preparation.
All right, and I just want to be clear on what I thought that I heard. Just a comment was less energy consumed doesn't actually equal more money saved.
I don't like to say that, you're going to save money because energy costs change and, they fluctuate with the market. So that's the tough thing. And more utilities are going to, across the country, more fluctuating rates anyhow, but you will save energy. This counselor mentioned earlier that, the cost he put into his home, he didn't see savings. In fact, he saw the price go up. But I would counter that by saying that the price would have even been higher if he hadn't done that work. Energy costs are tough to gauge. When we did this, we did the cost analysis, it's a snapshot in time based on the current rates. So, again, if the rates go up, and you're saving energy and like these homes perform 45% better than code, then you're going to be saving money, but the rates go up. So you're definitely saving money, you're saving energy, your home is more comfortable, but I don't like to always hang my hat on that because people will turn around and say, well, my bill went up, but it went up because the energy costs went up, not because of consumption.
Right, I just don't want next year budget season after we've been designated and have done all the right things, we expect to see a decrease in a bill every once in a while or a cost, and if we don't see that, I just want to make sure that one doesn't necessarily equal the other. Thank you.
Councilor Boschman.
Who has more power if we adopt this? Does the building inspector have more power, or does the HERD have more power?
The building code official has all the power. The HERS rater just performs, as Kelly mentioned, provides the energy modeling and the documentation to show that you're compliant to the code. The building inspector still has to go out and do all the inspections required for new construction, has to go out and do the insulation inspections, everything that they're required to do, they continue to have to do. The only addition is the additional paperwork that's provided by the HERS rater.
All right.
Any other further questions from counselors? That said, I'd like to thank the three of you. Just learned more about code as it pertains to energy efficiency than I ever thought I could get out of a single meeting. So certainly with that, I'd like to thank you. Glad to incentivize a greater path towards efficiency and green efforts. And at the risk of sounding like a millennial, of reducing our footprint and environmental impact for the generations to come. More importantly, I'm glad to see us taking the right steps towards helping our residents and our city, both in terms of efficiency and cost savings.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you very much for your time.
President, thank you. I just wanted to add the amount of work that Kelly Brown has put in. Certainly, John Hume, you've always been an outstanding partner with MRPC. We really, really appreciate the efforts. And Subi, where are you? You're back there. Raise your hand. Get up there and say hi. All right. She's done a lot of work as well. And AJ, TJ. AJ. Is there a TJ out there? AJ Tarigny, my chief of staff, did a great deal of work on this as well. We thank all of you for your efforts. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And I'd also like to thank the two members of our Energy Commission who are here this evening. Excuse me, three, I apologize, who are here this evening. So thank you so much. I'll mention who those, Andrew Cordio, Chair, Kelly Johnson, former Chair, I believe, and Jenna David. So thank you for your service and for walking us through this process up to this point. Moving on to the agenda, Economic Development Committee oral report. Councilor Beazall.
Thank you. On August 9th, Fitchburg Economic Development Committee met to hear an informative presentation by Economic Development Director Mary Jo Bohat. The focus of the talk was to outline and discuss the various developmental tools and incentives that are available to the city relative to growth and strengthening of commercial tax base. During her presentation, Ms. Bohat described a full range of partner organizations from local, state, and federal level, each which deals with specific aspects of economic development. She also emphasized the importance of fostering and building upon these partner relationships for long term. So a lot of the discussion was focused around partnerships and making sure that we're very active in continuing those partnerships, whether they be local, state, or at the federal level. While other more local groups, some ad hoc in nature, focus on more local needs. So there are some actual groups in Fitchburg that took up the own needs, whether it's north of Main Street, where they're dealing with different parts of the community. And this, it's important for our economic development person to also stay in contact with them. At the state level, economic development supports comes in various forms through agencies such as the Mass Department of Housing and Community Development, which offers periodic specialized training workshops on downtown redevelopment, creating vitality through placemaking and other current themes. So a lot of these things are out there, and one of Mary Jo's crusades is to make more businesses aware of what's going on and what they're entitled to or what there is available to them. The Massachusetts Office of Business Development engages with commercial ventures relative to state economic development incentive programs, which involves the use of TIFs as a development incentive. Ms. Bohat emphasized that her role with the city is to guide businesses and prospective developers through the programs and incentives that are available to them. At the federal level, Ms. Bohat described the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which has natural objectives related to economic development namely job creations and the removal of slums and blight. And a lot of times in the community, we talk about getting rid of old buildings and old homes and maybe upgrading to something else. She explained that HUD administers the Community Development Block Grant Program, and the city of Fitchburg is a CDBG entitlement community, which receives funding annually for a variety of community purposes, which includes economic development. She noted that Fitchburg's industrial history has caused a variety of former industrial properties, many from the paper mill manufacturing era, to be known or suspected contaminations issues to be addressed. Ms. Bohat described that 2 U.S. Environmental Protection Agencies brownfield site testing programs, which are administered locally by both Fitchburg Redevelopment Authority and the Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission. The existence of the EPA brownfield sites investigation funding, as administered locally by these 2 organizations, provides Fitchburg with valuable resources aimed at assisting redevelopers on challenging sites while they seek to qualify the extent of environmental cleanup that might be needed for a successful reuse. So a lot of times when people are looking at sites and they find out that they're contaminated, the first thing that is asked is, so what do I need to do to fix this? These organizations are there to help and to partner with these people to make sure that they get cleaned up correctly. I just want to thank Ms. Bohat for her presentation, but also I want to thank her mostly for making us aware of all the partnerships that exist. Literally, she gave us list of organizations out there that she's working with, state, federal, local, and it's very important, like she said, to make sure that she's hands-on in developing these partnerships and kind of connecting people, and whether it's prospective buyers or whether it's future builders, to make sure that they hook up with these agencies in the correct way. So I just wanted to thank her very much for the presentation. It was well thought through, and I believe she's here tonight if anyone has any questions for her. But,
Councilor Bean.
Move the report placed on file.
Second.
I have a motion and second to accept the Economic Development Committee report and for it to be placed on file. Speaking to the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. It is unanimous. Legislative Affairs Committee oral report. Councilor Bean.
Mr. Chairman, Legislative Affairs Committee met tonight, had 2 items. Petition 206-16, Council Bean, Boschman, Green, Beazwell, Clark, to restore the option to allow the City Council members to participate in health care benefits. That was given leave to withdraw. In 207-16, Barbara Nealon, Chairperson, Human Rights Commission, to increase the Human Rights Commission membership from 5 members and 1 associate member to 9 members and 2 associate members, and that was given granted.
Motion to accept the committee's report on 207-16.
Second.
I have a motion and second to accept the committee's report on was that just one?
Yes.
On 207-16.
On the motion,
Speak on the motion.
may I say something about 206-16? I know it's going to be pulled. I already understand that.
We'll get to that in a moment,
All right.
Councilor. I have a motion and second to accept 207-16. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It's unanimous. The motion carries. 206-16 is before you.
Motion to give 206-16 to deny 206-16.
Second.
I have a motion and second to deny 206-16. Speaking to the motion, Councilor
On the
Boschman.
motion. I know Councilor George wants to deny it, but I want to say something. I'm not offended by any of the councils when they talk about how many hours that we put in. I take this job, and I bother a lot of the councils. I bother you. I call you up constantly. I call Amy Green up constantly. Jeff Bean, I call every day. Marcus, I called you. Tom, I talk to you, and I talk to you all the time.
Point of clarification, you call me twice a day.
Dave Clark, Dean Tran, and Angelo Bizzo. What upsets me the most about this thing is when somebody says that we put in less than 20 hours a week. Well, I disagree. I put in a lot of hours. Ask my mother, and you guys know I call you all. That's what my mother, my wife, sorry, my wife. But really what bothers me the most is that we rejected this petition that some councils signed because of cost. Cost. $15,000 cost. So, my argument, if we're going to stand up and we're going to become righteous and we're going to stand in front of the public and say, hey, look it, $15,000 total cost for 11 councils, $165,000 a year. We can't afford. I want to ask one question, if we're going to be this righteous. We passed the mayor's budget. We gave a $15,000 raise, 3 months on the job. We said to a one-way Main Street, and I'll quote, council said, it's cheap money. If it doesn't work, we'll bring it back for a $20,000 more backwards. So $20,000 one way, $20,000 the other way. It's $40,000. We get a report from the Airport Commission saying we can save some money. There's not enough work for a party. We can save anywhere from $50,000 to $60,000 plus health care and the retirement. But we know it all. We said, no, that's not true. We go out and we give $160,000 to a guy to run 80 men. At a cost of $2,000 a man, but he deserves it at $160,000. We hire an HR person at a cost of $50,000 to $80,000 a year, because I don't know the price, and we say that's perfectly okay. But our surrounding communities do not have two; they have one. But we need two. And then you tell the people we're worried about the budget and we're worried about this. And then I get a phone call from some school committee members, and they're saying, you know what you're going to do to our budget? And I look at her and I say, what? What am I going to do to your budget? Well, you're taking half the budget, and what I see, you're top-heavy, and you're laying off low people, and you keep the top management. But you're not supposed to say anything about that. Or when we get a B.F. Brown and we spend $1 million, and we keep the school open for 9 months,
Counselor,
and all of a sudden we shut it off.
Can you please restrict your comments to the
It
specific
is. I'm giving you examples how we are, on how we're saying. What I'm upset about is that if we're going to cut, if we're going to say we're conservative, and we want to go by the budget, then let's go by the budget. If they're going to cut, then let's cut. Let's not say, I want to look like a hero here for the public and say, look at me. I didn't want to give health care. We just saved $7,000 to $15,000 per employee. Well, half of us are going to get, half of you get it already. And some of you, when you retire, are going to be on it automatically because you're entitled to it. So how does that rate? But that's all I want to say because I was upset. Because we do work hard. All of you councilors work hard. And I'm upset when I get phone calls and things like that to say we don't deserve it because we only work less than 20 hours. And I'll say it to everybody. If you don't like the law, change the law. I didn't make the law. I only go by what the law says. And if you don't like it, change it. Thank you.
Councilor Joseph.
When we went through all of this 15 months ago, okay, there was a lot of discussion and a lot of good points and bad points. My position was then the same as it is now, never changed it, okay? My only thing that I even had talked to the mayor about, and I thought, and Angelo, I think when it was originally brought up, the best idea, there's nobody in this room that deserves more compensation than any other. Okay, so if you're making 11,000 and you're making 11,000 and you're making 11,000, we're all on an even keel of making 11,000. If somebody gets the health care as because they're a city council member, not because they're the spouse of a city employee, or not because they're a retiree or anything like that, I'm saying specifically just because they're a council member, they're getting additional compensation. Okay, so if that means it costs the city $5,000 to give them the additional compensation, then I'm entitled to the same $5,000. Okay, if they were to say, I will take $6,000 and $5,000 in health care, I'm all for it. We're all on the same even playing field. Okay, but to say that one person should get more because they have health care is a benefit that we should all get or nobody gets. Okay, and that's my position. And I think that it was kind of brought up. There was a little bit more thought given into it last time it went around, and there was a little bit more research, but it still failed last time because it didn't really go anywhere with the counselors paying for their share of the health care. Okay, so that's why I'm still not in favor of it now as I was 6 months ago or a year and a half ago, is we all need to be on the same level playing field with compensation. If you want to pay for it, have it come out of your $11,000, I'm all for it. But there was nothing that was said that was going to do that. The petition just said make it eligible for everybody. That gives people more pay than I get. So it doesn't make sense to me to do that way. That's just my rationale.
Councilor Di Natale.
You know you lose the argument when you start attacking people personally for whether they have insurance or not. It's none of your business what anybody in this room has. You don't like it, you can work for the city, or you can have your spouse work for the city. You didn't sign up for this job because you were going to get benefits. None of us did.
Keep this professional.
So that's number one. Number two, if everybody is so hopped up about this, well, some. I've never seen any such passion on this topic than anything else I've seen on this council in a long time. Don't talk to me about the budget. This was brought up 3 times in the last 5 years. Does anybody honestly think that the state law says all part-time workers who work 20 hours or less a week aren't eligible for health care, but elected officials, whether they work an hour or 25, are? In this state, you really think that that's the law? I heard it being cited, but I think there's more to it than that.
Oh, that is the law.
Okay, well, wonderful. I haven't heard it from him yet. But if it is the law, then everybody in this room can go home and wave the pom-poms. Yippee, we won the argument because the state says so, which I argue it doesn't, or it's more in depth than that, because if it was the case, boy, we really pull a fast one on the state for 5 years, haven't we? Huh? That really makes sense. And if everybody's so concerned with what we did 5 years ago wasn't allowed, why didn't someone make a simple phone call to the state or to the attorneys or to someone to get clarification? None of you did. Now, all of a sudden, 5 years later, we have a come-to-Jesus moment. So please, don't talk to me about budgetary finance, okay? We get compensated $10,000 per year per counselor. If you want to be treated the same as our part-time workers who make double that, then are you saying you're for a doubling in our compensation on the salary side? It makes no sense, okay? I want clarification from the attorneys what the law says, because I am not going to believe right now that what we did 5 years ago was illegal, okay? And if it was illegal, you're going to go back to your constituents and say, yippee! I don't think so, okay? So let's get the clarification. But this is 3 times now, and this is the only time out of 3 times people have raised this issue. I will reiterate it again. Everybody in this room was here for the last vote we took, except one. 10 of the 11 were here the last time we talked about this. Nothing like this was said at the last one. Thank you.
Councilor Green.
I only bring up that as the petition reads, that we were going to be able to participate in health care benefits. That's how the petition reads. And I wanted clarification on Mass General Law, Chapter 32, Section B, which does state, the very last sentence says that it doesn't matter how many hours you put in, that you could be obligated to have that as an award. I'm only speaking for myself. I don't need the insurance from the city council because, as everybody knows, my spouse is a city employee. So I do get the benefit of insurance through my spouse being a city employee. And again, I'm passionate when residents and members of this community take the time to send emails or calls on the phone, either in support or in opposition of particular things, because to me that means that they're paying attention. They're noticing what's going on. But on the flip side of that, to be accused of underhanding or sleight of hands or lining our own cap with our own feathers, that clearly is not the case. And I would like to think that the 5 members that put their names on this petition, were that there would be an option if you wanted to participate in health care benefits, that could be made available to you. Thank you.
Councillor Tran.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have any passion about this issue. If a city councilor chooses to opt in, I don't care. It doesn't affect me. Matter of fact, it doesn't affect anybody at home as well. If a city council chooses to opt in, your property tax is not going to go up. Your water and sewer rates aren't going to go up. So I don't know what's the reason behind telling the public that if a city council opts into the health care, that the budget is going to blow up. The property tax is going to go up. Water and sewer rates going to go up. That's not a fact. Just want to make a comment on some of the things that I've heard tonight. Like I said, and I agree with Councilor Di Natale, it's none of my business. If a council to the left of me or a council to the right of me chooses to opt in, it's none of my business. It's absolutely none of my business. So that is why when I voted in 2011 to take away the option, I came to the conclusion that it's the wrong thing to do. The other thing I heard tonight was that councils are being paid $11,000. I don't think I'm being paid $11,000.
Whatever I want.
That's all. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilor Di Natale.
Very quickly, I did not say it's nobody's business if someone opts into the plan. I said if there is a spouse that has the health insurance or a full-time employee who's retired, that is why they have it. And they shouldn't be lambasted in public because they have it through those means. As to why it would be a budgetary concern, I can't believe what I just heard. No one said it's going to blow the budget up. No one said it's going to raise property taxes or water and sewer fees. I know I've never said that. I don't know if anybody else did. I didn't hear anybody else. If a counselor goes on the family plan, which in this city, I don't get this one, is 2 people, you could have 40 people on the same health plan and pay the same premium as if you had 2. It's $15,000 in premiums that the city has to pay for per year, i.e. the taxpayers have to pay it. So yes, it is the people's business. It is the people's right to know. Because we sit here every year and we talk about an unfunded health care liability of $128 million that we don't really have anything put it towards. And we're going to sit here and say we openly embrace the potential of adding $15,000 per counselor per year in cost. I know someone's going to probably say, well, that's what the state says. That hasn't been determined yet. But it is a cost. It's a big cost. It's tripling our compensation. Is everybody here prepared to add $15,000 per counselor, whoever opts in, to a health care liability that's $128 million? So to say this doesn't have a budget impact is complete fallacy. Thank you.
Councilor Beazall.
Thank you. I just wanted to, this is legislative affairs. Before we move to finance of how this would be financed, I think we needed to look at the legalities of this petition, which I think in legislative affairs we did tonight. So I think there's a motion on the table, so move it.
Councilor Tran, are you adding a new point to the discussion?
Point of order to the motion. The record's on the floor to be voted on. That should, I believe that should be voted on. If it doesn't passes, then another motion can be made to deny it. But the records before us is to vote on a leave to withdraw.
Councilor Joseph.
That was just a recommendation by the committee, and the committee as a whole can make its own. That was only the recommendation of the committee, and the committee as a whole can make its own recommendation.
So Councilor Tran, that's correct. So a councilor can choose to make a motion contrary or in agreement with the committee's ultimate recommendation, as was done here. That said, we have a motion and second to deny 206-16. All those in favor of denying the petition?
Aye.
Aye.
Show of hands, please. All opposed? One in opposition. Motion carries. 206 is denied. Orders. Finance. 210-16. Ordered that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, the FY17 State 911 Department Support and Incentive Grant, the approximate amount of $115,227 for the purposes of the said grant. Order 211-16, ordered that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds for the Federal Department of Justice Office of the Justice Programs for the FY17 Local JAG Award LLEBG 20 in the approximate amount of $28,415 for the purpose of said grant.
Motion to send 210 and 211 to finance.
Second.
I have a motion and second to send 210 and 211-16 to finance. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Petitions.
President, make a motion that petition 212-16, 212-14 through and including 224-16, excluding 217-16, be sent to respective committees.
Mr. President, can we have that, the 212-16 go to Legislative Affairs, please?
212.
Councilor Bean, are you comfortable with that, amending your?
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have a second?
214 and 215 go to public hearing.
Yes. All right. We'll see if I can get this all right. I have a motion and second to send petitions 212 up through and including 224-16, excluding 217 and 213-16 to their respective committees, and sending 221. 221, excuse me, what are the other? 214 and 215-16, all to their public hearings on September 20th. Excuse me, 221-16 will be sent to the planning board and to a public hearing on November. And 220 also. This is the most complicated petition I think I've seen to date.
Second all that.
All right, I have a motion and second. Speaking to the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Unanimous.
Move that 213-16 be given leave to withdraw.
That was already.
Did we already do that?
That was already given.
Okay.
Just
Move to adjourn.
I have a motion and second to adjourn. Do we have an announcement, Councilor Green?
I just wanted to make an announcement that we have voting on Thursday. This Thursday, polling places are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And it's important that everybody get out and exercise their exercise their right to vote. Thank you.
An additional announcement, Mayor Talley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to announce to everyone, certainly the viewing public and the council, our Fitchburg Fire Department this weekend, their Labor Day boot drive, raised $16,000.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And we're always, and I wasn't aware of this, but I was told that we're always in the top 10 in the state on that Labor Day endeavor, and in terms of how much money we've raised. I think it's a 2-day event that they do that. So that's quite a tribute to them. We want to say thank you for a grateful city. Thank you.
I have a motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you.